سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وعلمنا وزدنا من فضلك علما اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Continuing with our recitation and interpretation of the Qur'an by Imam Ghazali, which is his book, a portion from amongst the Ihya al-Muddin, which is the first volume in which Imam Ghazali talks about the secrets of ibadah. And in the first volume, Imam Ghazali goes through all the ibadah that we do with salah, fasting, zakah, hajj, recitation of Qur'an, dhikr. And he takes us into the secrets of these a'mal, just as we are reading now about the Qur'an. And inshallah, we mean to Allah gives us the opportunity and ability to be able to go through all the other ibadat as well, so that we learn the reality of what all these types of worship are about. So Ghazali says the ninth mental task is the Qur'an reader's gradually rising to a state in which he feels that he is hearing the speech of Allah from Allah himself and not from himself, meaning the reader. So when one reads the Qur'an, the highest level is that one believes that he is hearing it from Allah. And this could only happen if a person doesn't have any form of being concerned or noticing himself. They call this in the spiritual path the state of annihilation, where a person doesn't even recognize that they are existing. One is when one does dhikr or reads the Qur'an or does any good deeds, one is constantly noticing people. And this is riya, this is showing off. When we notice people, this is called riya. Because we're doing things because someone is seeing us, or someone so and so is going to be pleased with us or be impressed with us. If you transgress this or transcend this stage through spiritual striving, a person then is no more concerned about people. And he attains ikhlas. Ikhlas is the opposite of riya. Sincerity is the opposite of showing off. But now, he's not worried about people, but he's witnessing and noticing himself. I am reading the Qur'an, I am doing so much ibadah, I am doing. And this is called al-ujub, this is called ostentation. This is now, he's left being concerned with people, but now he's being concerned with himself. And the cure for ostentation is sidq, is truthfulness. And therefore the two terms that we always hear on the tongues of the spiritual masters are as-sidq wal-ikhlas, to have sincerity and to have truthfulness. Not to worry about people, and not even to worry about yourself. The awliya, when they perform Qur'an, they don't even see that it is me performing Qur'an. They see it is Allah that is making these actions come off me. I am myself in doing nothing. And that is how one gets rid of ujub. To a point that say when a person remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and recites the Qur'an, he moves through the months and through the years, through his spiritual purification, from witnessing people and then witnessing himself to a point where he doesn't even witness that he even exists. And he only witnesses Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the highest stage that Imam Ghazali is speaking about. So he says the grades of Qur'an reading are 3 in number. The lowest grade is when a man supposes that he is reading the Qur'an to Allah, standing in front of him, and Allah is looking at him and listening to what he is reading. In this case, his mental condition is one of begging Allah, praising and entreating him and supplicating to him. So the lowest stage is we read the Qur'an to Allah, or we perform acts of ibadah, and we are conscious that Allah is seeing us. And so we become humble and we make dua and we entreat and plead to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second grade is when a man views with his mind that Allah is seeing him, addressing him with his kindness. Sorry, the first one is that a man supposes he is reading it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you imagine you are in the court of Allah reading the Qur'an to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore you ask from him. The second grade is when a man views with his mind that Allah is seeing him, addressing him with his kindness, and secretly conversing with him with his gifts and beneficence. So his station is one of modesty, magnification, listening, and understanding. So if one keeps in mind that Allah is now gazing upon a person and looking upon a person, this person then feels shy and modest. One is you think you are reading to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you're still concerned with yourself. The second is when you know Allah is seeing you, you're still concerned with yourself, but you are more wary because now Allah can see everything. And you become more shy and humble. The third grade is when a man feels that he is seeing the speaker, Allah, in the speech. that is in the Quran, and His attributes in its sentences. So Allah, someone is reading the Quran, but when they read the Quran, it is if they are seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His attributes in the verses. Worship Allah, the Prophet said in the hadith, when he described the meaning of complete perfection and in worship, what did he say? It is to worship Allah as though you see Him. And if you cannot see Him, then know that He sees you. He does not think of himself, the Quran recited, does not think of himself, nor his Quran reading, nor the relation of divine gifts to him as the one upon whom they are bestowed. Rather, he confines his care to the speaker, Allah, and concentrates his thoughts on Him, as if he were engrossed in the vision of the speaker himself, being divested of thought or anything other than Him. So he doesn't even witness his own reading, nor the gifts and the light and the nur and the barakah and the blessings that are being bestowed upon him. He pays no attention to that. He's only concerned with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For this reason, some of the pious would say that, oh Allah, if we do not ask you for Jannah because we are in need of Jannah. And some of them would say, Allah, if we ask you for Jannah out of love of Jannah, then throw us into Jahannam. But we only want you. So if we ask for your countenance, then do not deprive us. So some desire Jannah and some desire the creator of Jannah. This is the grade of those drawn near to Allah, the Muqarrabeen, while the grades preceding it, this is the first and second grade, constitute the grades of the people of the right, Ashabul Yameen. All grades other than these are from the grades of the Ghafilin, people that have absolutely no attention, they pay no attention in their ibadah. It is of the highest grade of reading the Quran that Ja'far bin Muhammad as-Sadiq anhu reported when he said, I swear by Allah, certainly Allah has revealed Himself to men in His speech, but they do not see Him. يتجلى الله للناس في كلامه لكن لا يعلمون. Allah manifests Himself to a person in his speech when he is reciting the Quran, but because of the veil on the heart, we do not see. Once Ja'far rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi experienced an ecstatic state in his ritual prayer so that he fell faint. When he recovered, he was told what had happened and was asked by people concerning its cause. He replied, I was constantly repeating in my mind the Quranic verse in the ritual prayer until I heard it from the speaker himself. And then my body could not remain steady because I witnessed Allah's power. So he kept on reciting verses in his mind and imagining it, that it is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. It is a grade like this that the sweetness of the Quran reading and the pleasure of secret conversation and communion with Allah become intense. For this reason, a certain wise man said, I used to read the Quran but did not find the sweetness of it until I recited it as if I were hearing it from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reciting it to his companions. So a person said he found no sweetness. So when he used to recite the Quran, he used to imagine that he's listening to the Quran being recited by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his companions. Then rising to a higher station than this, I used to recite the Quran as if I were hearing it from the angel Jibreel alayhi salam, who was delivering it to the Messenger of Allah. So when you recite, you would remember how when Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam brought the revelation to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he'd recite thinking that now he's listening to it from Jibreel alayhi salam. Then Allah brought me to a closer stage. I now hear it from its speaker, meaning from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. At this stage, I found in the Quran such intense pleasure and delight that I could not restrain myself. And therefore, a person will be able to read the Quran for days and nights without getting tired. Uthman and Hudayfa radiallahu ta'ala anhuma said, if men's souls are purified from evil qualities, they will never tire and not be satisfied with reading the Quran. Rather, some thirst for it will always remain. The meaning for that is, if our hearts were pure, we would never feel that we've read our portion for today. We'll always feel that we need to read more and more. This is how people ended up reading so many khatams in a day. They ended up reading. We see in Ramadan, Imam Shafi'i used to read a khatam in the morning and a khatam in the evening. 60 khatams in Ramadan. And there are many stories out of Ramadan. There were some of the pious who read the Quran. Some of them said they went to a point of reading 4 khatams in the day and 4 khatams in the evening. And the highest that has been narrated about, and this is not through a karama or miracle. This is because of their love for the Quran and they completely devoting themselves to the Quran. The highest that has been recorded was someone who reached reading 8 khatams in the day and 8 khatams at night. Sayyidina Rabi'a al-Adawiyya, she read 7,000 khatams in her lifetime in her grave. She dug her grave in her lifetime and she read 7,000 khatams in her grave to prepare her grave for the hereafter. Habib Ahmad Muhammad al-Mihdar, when he heard about this from the valley of Hadramaut, he said, a woman read 7,000 khatams? How can that be? So he read 8,000. He dug his grave and he read 8,000 khatams. And he said, they say he would fill his grave with grain, fill the brim, and then he'd give it all out in charity. How do they prepare their graves? And what have we done to prepare our graves? No. So they only said this, what did Sayyidina Uthman and Sayyidina Hudayfa, that if our hearts were pure, we would never tire of reading the Qur'an. They only said this because it is by purification of the heart that the soul rises to the stage of viewing the speaker in his speech and his attributes in his sentences. For this reason, Thabit al-Bunani, rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, said, for 20 years I struggled against my lower soul in order to attain the Qur'an at its highest grade. And then for 20 years I enjoyed the delight of it. He says, for 20 years I struggled to read Tahajjud at night. Meaning for 20 years I got up, I was tired, and I would read, and I'd be struggling against my soul. 20 years. He says, only after 20 years, then for another 20 years, I started to feel the delight in the Qiyamul Layl. We get up one night, we get tired, we think, oh, you know what, khalas, it's too different. 20 years, you will get up and strive and strive. And what's the reason for that? Is Allah wants to see your sincerity. Allah will not give His great gifts to a person unless He tests a person to see, are you really sincere? If you're getting up for Tahajjud for the first year, second year, third year, it might, there might be different reasons. Person might want to be seen as being a pious person. He might have some position. And that sincerity that needs to come in only comes after many, many, many years. Some of the Salihin would say, unless a person is steadfast on adhkar and awrad and recitation of Qur'an and salutation of the Prophet on a daily basis for at least 3 to 4 hours, constantly for at least 7 to 8 years, if he doesn't do this, then he mustn't expect anything of the spiritual path. Because doing it daily is a sign that we are sincere. And then besides doing it daily for maybe 1 month, 2 months is okay, but for 7 to 10 years, day in, day out, it means that you've now made this a priority. Then Allah will only open the door for you. And this will be the beginning of the path. By viewing the speaker alone besides all else, a man fully obeys, or a human being fully obeys the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in which He says, فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ, then flee to Allah. And Allah saying, وَلَا تَجْعَلُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ, do not set up any other deities with Allah. One who does not see Allah in everything sees something other than Him. And if there is something other than Allah to which a man gives attention, this attention involves an element of hidden shirk. So if we do not see Allah in everything that we do, in all of our ibadah, in the creation, meaning we see Allah's wisdom and His attributes, it means we are noticing His creation. And it's a form of minor shirk. Rather, pure monotheism, Tawheed al-Khalis, consists in only seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything. Person comes walking in the street and he slaps you across the face. If you get upset with that person and you go and you retaliate, you've committed minor shirk. Because you thought that he was the one that slapped you. The awliya don't see that person, they say, this is Allah that slapped me. Or I must have done something wrong and Allah sent this person too. They would say even in their daily lives, when they were riding their horses, if the horse slipped, they regard it as a form of reprimanding from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something they did wrong. When things happen in the house, gauge your relationship with people, with your wife, with your spouses, with your husband, with your children. When things are going well, look at the times when they're going well and see that it's most probably the time when your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sound. And when things are going difficult, it's because most of the time we're neglecting our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, either our salah, and most times our salutations of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The salutations of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam come this one. And sometimes a person might be on a good wicket, if you can call it, of worship and ibadah and ta'ah, and things still go wrong. And this is Allah now trying to test him. And now you're doing all of the ibadah, but do you have the patience now to bear other people's bad character? And this was the quality of the prophets, is they had to bear the bad character of others, and they didn't get upset. The 10th mental task consists in the Quran reader's getting rid of any sense of his own ability and power and looking at himself with the eye of satisfaction and purification. Meaning, a person doesn't look at himself as I've done something or I've reached any level. When the Quran reader recites a verse on promise and praise of the pious, he will not view himself as one of these. When you read the verses of the people of Jannah, he doesn't think, oh yeah, you know what, I'm of the people of Jannah. When he reads the verses, وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ, and those who in the early hours of the morning, they make istighfar. And even though he is awake, he'll then blame himself. He says, you are awake in the morning in istighfar, yes, but you are not intended by this verse. There's some other reason you've gotten up. And so they look for excuses to put themselves down. Because whoever looks at himself with an eye of satisfaction, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks upon him with an eye of disdain. And whoever looks upon himself with the eye of disdain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then looks upon him with the eye of satisfaction. Rather, he will view those who have the most certain faith and those who are the most truthful in religion, meaning the awliya and the devout, when these verses are mentioned, and will hope that Allah will join him with them by raising him to their spiritual states. When he recites verses on divine hatred and divine reproach of the disobedient and those falling short of religious duties, he will view himself here, and fearing and pitying will suppose that he is the man addressed and intended in these verses. When Allah in the verse in the Quran reprimands people, you will believe and think that I am the one intended. Even though you might have a host of good deeds, you might be doing a lot of good deeds, but you will think that perhaps there is something in my heart that Allah knows about which I am not aware. And the knowledge of Allah should make us extremely fearful. Why? Is because out of mercy sometimes Allah keeps us in a good space. But Allah alone knows that were we to be tested with something, would we actually falter or would we actually be true to Him? One of the Abidin, one of the worshippers of Bani Israel, worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 500 years. And for 500 years he worshipped and he didn't feel any sweetness in his ibadah. So he complained to the Prophet of the time, and the Prophet of the time spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah told the Prophet that even if he had to worship him for another 500 years, he wouldn't move from his spiritual state. The Prophet was amazed and asked why. He said, out of mercy on him, I'm keeping him where he is. But I know that had I tested him with a woman, he would not hesitate to fall into haram with her. And so we don't know, many times we think we are good, but have you been tested with temptations? Have you been tested with different things? We don't know. And we never ask to be tested. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always to treat us with gentleness and kindness. And so Allah's knowledge of us is complete. And so we can never say that perhaps I should be having this or should be having that, or I should be on this level, on that level. We don't know. We might be in a good space just out of Allah's mercy for us, but in reality, we don't even weigh anything in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are people that Allah has mercy on them by keeping them in good deeds. But Allah knows the true state of their heart. They have absolutely no worth in Allah's eyes. And the awliya are the awliya because Allah knows that no matter what they were tested with or would be tested with, they will never prefer anything over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And generally, the main things, the major spiritual diseases which affect people and all the other spiritual diseases fall under these are the love of wealth, the love of woman, and the love of status. A person might worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he'll be truthful in everything he does. He won't steal a single cent. But when it comes to woman, it's like he doesn't know the meaning of taqwa and piety. Another person might never look at a woman and he performs all his actions and his ibadah with complete perfection. But when it comes to business dealings and getting an extra few dollars or rands here and there, or making a profit here, it's like he doesn't know the meaning of taqwa. And another person might be complete in the first two categories, but when it comes to his name must be in front and he must get the recognition for things, and he doesn't know the meaning of taqwa, and he'll lie and deceive and do everything so that he is put forth. And all the spiritual diseases fall under these three things. And the spiritual path generally is based on a person extricating these three things from their life. Love of wealth, love of woman, and love of status. And for women, obviously the same thing will go with men. For this reason, Abdullah ibn Umar anhu used to say in his prayer, "O Allah, I seek the forgiveness of you for my injustice and infidelity." He was asked the meaning of this injustice. What is the meaning of infidelity here? He replied, he recited the words of Allah, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَظَلُومٌ كَفَّارٌ. And surely man is indeed very unjust and ungrateful. Yusuf bin Asbat rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, was asked, what do you pray for when you read the Quran? He replied, what I pray for is that I seek the forgiveness of Allah for my shortcomings in reading the Quran 70 times. Since he saw himself as the one with shortcomings in Quran reading, this became a cause of his nearness to Allah. He's doing a good action, but he's still seeking forgiveness from Allah for that same action he's doing, because he knows no matter how hard I try, it is still falling short of what is worthy for the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the man who views his distance from Allah when in a state of nearness to him, Allah then shows him kindness. For the man who views his distance from Allah when in a state of nearness to him, is shown by Allah kindness in his state of fear of him, so that his fear leads him to another degree of nearness beyond the existing one. So if we are worshipping Allah and we are still fearful that what I'm doing is falling short of the mark, what are we going to do? We're going to continue and try harder. And when we try harder, we still see that we are falling short. What happens? Every day becomes a way of becoming closer and closer. And so they would say the pious, even though you say pull up your socks, and they are exerting themselves to the utmost, they would see themselves as falling short. And the negligent ones, they are falling short, but they see themselves as reaching perfection. Oh, I've read my quarter juz for the day. I've read quarter juz of Qur'an, alhamdulillah. You know, some people don't even read Qur'an at all. And we think, okay, alhamdulillah, quarter juz. And the awliya will be reading 5 juz and 10 juz a day, and they think, astaghfirullah, only 10 juz. You know, the Salihin used to read how many every day. That's in terms of quantity. In terms of quality, you know, read your salah. I've read only 1 rak'at with concentration. And someone who's negligent, alhamdulillah, in one sajda, when I said subhanallah, in one time I had concentration, alhamdulillah. No. But he who views his nearness to Allah beyond the existing one, But he who views his nearness to Allah while in fact being distant from Him is deceived by a sense of security against Allah, which takes him even further from Allah and lower than his present position. If a person believes he is close to Allah, what happens? He becomes negligent. And that's a form of punishment. It's a veil upon him, because then he thinks, okay, I don't have to do much. I'm doing a little bit, other people are not doing it all. Therefore, the Prophet said, in religious matters, look at those who are higher than you. And in worldly matters, look at those that are lower than you. Whenever a man sees himself with the eye of satisfaction, he becomes veiled from Allah. When, however, he crosses the limit of looking at himself and does not see in his Qur'an reading anything except Allah, then the secret of the invisible world is revealed to him directly. The station of spiritual unveiling. Abu Sulaiman al-Darani rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi said, Ibn Thawban promised his brother to break his fast with him at sunset, but he delayed until dawn. One of the companions, or one of the tabi'in, promised that he would go break his fast with one of the companions, and he delayed. When did he see him? He only saw him at the time of Fajr. The next day his brother met him and complained, you promised to break your fast with me and then you broke the promise. He replied, had I not made a promise to you, I would not have informed you of what prevented me from coming to you. Then he explained, he said, what prevented to me was on performing the evening prayer. I said to myself that I would perform the witr before coming to you, since I did not feel secure against the possibility of being overtaken by death. He was supposed to go meet his brother for iftar for after Isha. And before he went, he said, I should just read the witr. I don't know if I'm going to live long enough after I visit this, my friend. When I became engaged in the supplication of the witr, I felt as if I was being lifted to a green meadow where there were different types of flowers from paradise. I was constantly gazing upon them until the daybreak. In his salah, he reached the state of spiritual unveiling. Allah opened up a vision of Jannah for him. And he was reading the Qur'an, but his heart was witnessing as though he is in Jannah. And so, how can he leave that to go sit with, come back to the world? These mystical intuitions can only occur after one gets rid of oneself and does not look at oneself with a sense of satisfaction and purification, nor at one's passion. Then these intuitions become specific in according with the mental state of the man receiving them. Thus, when he recites verses on hope and his mental state is dominated by a good fortune from them, the images of paradise come to him through mystical intuition, as in the case of Ibn Thawban, as just mentioned, and he views it as though he sees it with his own eyes. But if fear dominates him as a result of reading the verses of punishment, then the hellfire is shown to him through the intuition so that he sees its different types of punishment. This is because the speech of Allah includes those verses which are kind and witty, as well as those which are violent and forceful. So according to your spiritual state, then once a person reaches spiritual unveiling, different things will manifest to you according to the state that you are in. If you're in a state of hope, you will see paradise. If you're in a state of fear, you will see hellfire. Or the opposite will happen. So Allah takes you out of one state, and these are known as the maqamat al-yaqeen, the stations of nearness to Allah, the stations of certainty. And a person traverses these stations, وَأَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى, and they are without end. This is in accordance with Allah's attributes, since among Allah's attributes are mercy and kindness, as well as revenge and violence. Then in accordance with the Qur'an, with his view of the Quranic sentences and of divine attributes, his mind alternates in different mental states between the state of fear and the state of hope. And according to each of these mental states, the mind is prepared for a mystical unveiling or intuition appropriate to his mental state. Since it is impossible that the mental state of the listener will be different from the speech which he is hearing in the Qur'an. For in it are the speech of the one, Allah, who is pleased with him, the speech of the one who is revengeful. Allah is also known as Al-Muntaqim, the speech of the benevolent, the merciful, the speech of the avenger, the speech of the most powerful, the speech of the proud one, who need not care for anyone else, the speech of the compassionate, the speech of the sympathizer, who does not neglect anyone. So the verses have the different attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then once this station is reached, we know we're just reading the verses, but according to the verse that is revealed, things from the unseen become apparent to a person according to these verses. And therefore sometimes when you see even people that have reached this level and they read in the Qur'an, and we've seen some of the pious people and they read the Qur'an and they read the verses of mercy, then you actually see their eyes go pink, and you actually see in there that they are actually being overcome with mercy. When they read the verses of fear, it is as though they're actually seeing the hellfire. And this is a station of spiritual unveiling, which is a very, very high spiritual station. No person can reach it out of their own accord. It is only if Allah accepts a person that Allah enters the person into these stations. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessing of the Qur'an in the month of Ramadan to purify our souls, to allow us to be removed of ourselves, to teach us how to purify ourselves, and to put us in the company of those who can take us towards Him. They say the spiritual path are doors which can only be opened from the inside. No one can get to Allah on their own. And if someone thinks that he can, he must try and do it and see how far he is able to get. A person has to learn from someone who has taken the path before him. Not even in this world has Allah made a person able to reach perfection on his own. Even if when you become a doctor, what do they have to do? You have to go for an internship. Why? Is learn from one who's been there. The soccer player who's got potential, he needs a coach. No sports player ever reached greatness without a coach. Even though he had the talent, but what did he need? He needed a coach to hone that talent and mold him and take him out and show him the greater potential that he had. Likewise with cooking. No one in cooking, you need to spend time with you go for training. This is why universities existed in internships and certifications, to say this person now is qualified in this field. He's reached the level that now he's qualified. And in the same way, when it comes to the science of this purification of the heart, a person has to go through certain processes. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to take the path في خير ولطف وعافية. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصل الإنسان في خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات